my voice, so I'm going to bring the microphone as close as I can. But if you have trouble hearing what I'm saying, just indicate and I'll try and raise my voice a little bit. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the region in which we meet, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and their continued connection to the land, waters and community. We pay respects to the elders past, present and their descendants. Item 2 is the disclaimer. The terms and conditions of entry into the meeting are posted at the entry of the public gallery. I request all members of the public to read them prior to attending, but I always say, if you're going to make a deputation or ask questions, please keep all your comments and questions respectful of the council, staff and other members of the community. Item 3, attendance and apologies. I have apologies from the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Congerton, from the Whiteman Ward, Councillor Jones from the Pearce Ward, and Councillor Prodovnik of the Midland Guildford Ward. I believe there's other councillors present in the building but haven't entered the chamber yet. And we have got a quorum, that's why I've started at 6 p.m. Item 4, declarations of financial proximity, interest or interest affecting impartiality. Have we got any councillors? Okay, I'll just remind councillors there is an item coming up next week. There's some councillors need to put a declaration in on the Swan Carey matter. Item 5, public question time, questions relating to reports contained in the agenda. And 5.1, questions of notice which has been given. And a couple of questions from Dr. Fiona Horsent-Ross. Those 2 questions have been answered. Have you had the opportunity of seeing those answers, and is there anything coming out of them?
I'd like to ask a question about one of them, please.
Okay, we can come to the podium, thank you. If you can press the speak button so the red light comes on, adjust the microphone and...
For height.
Thank you.
Hi, Dr. Fiona Horsent-Ross, Bushmead Community. I haven't had a chance to read all of the words, but I appreciate the map that's been given and request to my the map that's been produced and following my request for the constraints of motion C 1.1. To me, it looks like the boundaries of the Robinson Grove development are different from those shown on the Satterley master plan available on the website. And I just wanted to ask, is that a later stage, or is there a reason why on the eastern boundary, the Robinson Grove outline ends more to the north? On the Satterley plan, there is townhouse blocks that look directly opposite to the housing on the other side of the street. There is no path. There is no clear path per the Satterley master plan, whereas there is on this map.
Mr. Vanderlyn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's difficult to answer the question without having the Satterley's master plan in front of me. What I do know is that the structure plan that was approved initially for the development actually only includes, if you look at the map that we've provided, more the western side of it. The eastern side was later added through subdivision, but that wasn't shown on the initial structure plan. So we've looked at the aerial photos and know that there's subdivisions that's been approved in that eastern side. But it may be that that northern boundary is not 100% correct.
I'm talking about the northeast, the bit that meets the Catherine Street, where you can see there's a bend next to the green on the Masterley Satterley plan. Their settlement, their development, goes further to the south. There's I don't know, half a dozen townhouse blocks, and there's also a proposed dog park right about where that green is, i.e. there's no clear path per the Satterley plan compared to this.
Mr. Mayor,
okay, I can raise it as a question.
Identifies what we had available. I'm more than happy to get that information and correct this map if it is incorrect.
If there's any further updating, Fiona will get it to you before next week.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That takes us on to item 5.2, questions without notice. There were nil. Item 6, reports and notices of motions. There were nil. moving on to page 4 of the run sheet, item 6.1, additional information from officers. There was nil, which takes us to item 6.2, deputations. And in accordance with the current procedures for public participation at agenda forums, all requests for in-person deputations and the submissions of written deputations were required by 3 p.m. Tuesday, the 25th of October 2022. And all written deputations received by 3 p.m. yesterday were circulated with the preliminary agenda last evening. So on part A of the agenda, item 13.2, adoption of the Morrison Road West Local Development Plan. There were 2 written deputations received, councillors. One from the Midland Society, not in support of the recommendation, and the second one from Mr. David Plant in support of the recommendation, and you should have those written submissions in your possession now. In part B, item 4.6, proposed amendment to outline development plan number 146 for Kimberley Street, Bullsbrook. It's on, I haven't got a page number, but it's an in-person deputation from Mr. Carlo Femminino. He's the Director, Principal of Town Planner in support of the recommendation. Carlo, are you here?
Yes.
Thank you. You've got 5 minutes for your deputation if you need it. Thank you. Thank you. You push the button, and councillors, it's on
Thank you.
page 279 of the agenda. Thank you.
Good evening, councillors and staff. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm representing the landowner for number 49 Kimberley Street in Bullsbrook. We're supportive of the recommendation put forward by the officers to the council. As you're aware, the property has been used as a medical centre since 2013 and provides a vital service to the local community. The amendment to the ODP is to allow for the medical centre to continue to operate and allow for a small retail area to provide for a potential chemist in support of the medical centre, and to allow for a small shop that will provide daily services to the local community. We're aware that the area is currently going under development at the moment and expanding, and certainly aware of the strategic planning framework that's in place for the area. The proposal put forward at the moment is a small development to this site, and certainly doesn't undermine the future strategic planning for the area. We also note that at present the area is underserviced, and the local community doesn't have access to a number of services available. This has gone through a fair bit of work and commenced back in March last year. It's been a bit of toing and throwing with the city, they've been fantastic with their support. And we certainly managed to address a number of issues that have been raised. The amendment to the ODP does provide for restrictions to uses and does provide restrictions to areas that are available on the site. I guess we're happy with those restrictions, and the aim of those restrictions is not to undermine the strategic planning framework that's in place for the area. The concept plan, we have prepared a concept plan which is a part of our submission, utilises the existing car parking, utilises the existing vehicular access areas to the road network. We've done that to try and reduce any potential impacts on the local community in terms of traffic and noise. Once again, it's only a small addition to the existing operations on site, so therefore we don't envisage that having an impact on the local community. Once again, we're happy with the recommendation and certainly hope that council will support that recommendation from the staff and progress this amendment. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions, councillors? Being no questions, sorry, I didn't see your hand, councillor. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in terms of the recommendation by council to recommend to the Western Australian Planning Commission that the proposed modification to outline the development plan be supported but modified to present in a slightly different way. Is that acceptable?
Yeah, that's fine. We don't have any issues with it, so yeah,
No,
not a problem. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation and coming along tonight, Carlo.
Thank you once again.
Thank you. That takes us to the next item on the agenda, councillors. Item 4.8, State Administrative Tribunal request to reconsider the proposed tavern, Action Road, Malaga. It's on page 358 of your agenda and is an in-person deputation by Mr. Noel Farrell, not in support of the item. Mr. Farrell, thank you. If you could make your way to the microphone. Once you push the talk button, beautiful, the red light's on, adjust the microphone to you. And once you start speaking, you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Honourable Mayor and councillors, I'm here about the proposed tavern at 5 Action Road, Malaga. As the previous application was rejected by all councillors, the applicant has taken the decision to mediation and the new proposal has been lodged. When you look at the first tavern proposal and this proposal, very little has changed, except for some ballards against the curb. You need to reject this application again. The installation of ballards and footpath, I believe, was designed to get the application approved without addressing the street parking and safety. The original application was refused due to unsafe road conditions and would be extremely dangerous for people and their cars if there was street parking along this portion of Action Road. If you do approve the new proposal, I believe there should be some amendments. The main amendment would be no parking signs on both sides of Action Road from the driveway of 15 Action Road to the southern crossover of 2 Pavers Circle, and concrete footpath and ballards extended to 15 Action Road driveway, which is only another 7 to 8 metres. I've attached a photo for you to have a look at that. No parking and no verge parking signs on both sides of the street should not be treated as a separate issue as it forms the framework for the safety of all concerned. In my original deputation, I outlined the street hazards. People will take the easiest option available to them. By not allowing street parking, patrons will be diverted to the designated parking areas and will be off the streets. I know the no parking signage would be a cost to the City of Swan, but this would save a lot of problems in the future. Our business would also be impacted if there was parking either side of Action Road in front of our property, because we often have large vehicles, long-haul trucks entering and exiting the property, creating another hazard. The aim is to reduce traffic hazards, not create additional ones. Container trucks, semi-trailers and oversized trucks that are not associated with our business often use the road as it is an industrial area. Once again, I strongly believe there should be no street parking on both sides of Action Road from 15 driveway of 15 Action Road to the southern crossover of 2 Pavers Circle, and the footpath and concrete ballards must be extended. I would appreciate your consideration in this matter, and I would just like to follow up that this is the worst location for a tavern in the whole of Malaga. If you have an opportunity, drive down the street. Thank you.
No, thank you. Are there any questions, councillors? Councillor Bowman first.
Thanks for your deputation, Noel. Noel, it looks like there's a reciprocal parking with the property next door.
Yep.
Do you think that patrons to the tavern will park there or continue to park on the road?
They'll park on the road because it's the easiest, rather than park at number 2 and then have to walk all the way around. Take the shortest route.
Thank you. Any other questions, councillors? Then I thank you, Noel, for your presentation, answering the questions.
Thank you
very much. Councillors, that takes us to item C, and item C 1.1. Councillor Zanino proposed realignment of the national freight route. It's on page 446 of your agenda, and the first in-person deputation is by Ms. Diane Avino, not supporting the notice of motion. Diane? Thank you. Once you start speaking, you'll have 5 minutes.
Okay. Good evening, Mr Mayor, CEO and councillors. My name is Diana Arvino and I represent the Bellevue Residents and Ratepayers Association. Bellevue Residential is slowly recovering from historical setbacks such as the Roe Highway cutting it in half and industrial activity as neighbours due to the Bellevue East Land Use Study recommendations now actioned. And we thank past members of this association, council and officers for this positive progress. Supporting this motion would be a step backwards for Bellevue by bringing industrial use back into residential areas and an insult for developers who have progressed large developments on the back of the 2018 decision, whereby interest in the area would decline with just the possibility of a freight line close by. The main rhetoric of the proponents is that a route east of Roe Highway will somehow solve traffic congestion in Bellevue and Midland. There is no evidence that the freight line is the main cause of traffic congestion, especially in Bellevue, where the freight line runs on an overpass over Lloyd Street. Council has passed a number of motions in the past for traffic studies of Midland and surrounds, of which no clear results seem to be available. One was a unanimous motion passed on the 28th of July 2021, requesting the Minister for Transport to prepare an integrated transport plan that involves an overarching review of the whole area with input provided from all stakeholders, including 3 local governments affected. This should be the focus of Council to determine where the main issues lie, then work towards a solution. The last paragraph of the officer's comment on this motion makes a similar statement. In the absence of consultation with the Shire of Mundaring, community groups, clear maps or further details, we can only assume the latest promises on this motion to avoid impact on Bellevue Residential, the new Robinson Grove and Bush Forever Reserve in Bushmead cannot be promised. The only other clear alternative east of Roe Highway is along the Helena River floodplain, which would be unviable environmentally and otherwise. Council made the right decision in July to reject this motion and focus on advocating for traffic studies to be progressed so the whole picture of the cause of congestion is known before any action is taken. Councillors, please do the same again and do not support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Any questions, councillors? There's no questions, so you can take your seat. Thank you. The next speaker on the same item is Dr. Fiona Aldsent-Ross from the Bushmead Conservation Cobbers, not in support of the motion. Thank you, Fiona. You have 5 minutes once you start speaking.
Good evening, Mr Mayor, CEO and councillors. Fiona Aldsent-Ross, representing the Bushmead community as well as Bushmead Conservation Cobbers. I used to be a trainer and I used to teach problem-solving skills. As an example of how to address a problem, this motion would be a fail in my books. It's common knowledge that the first step, and often one that's not done properly, is to define and analyse the problem. What does success look like, for example? The second step is to identify possible solutions. Notice the plural. There are often more than one ways to solve problems, some more viable than others. The third step is to review and evaluate the possible solutions. Next comes selecting the best solution, making a plan, implementing and evaluating the results. Looking at motion C 1.1, you'll see that it fails to follow this process. There's only a vague description of the traffic problems it is attempting to address. Which suburbs? Which traffic hotspots? Step 1 of problem solving failed, in my opinion. The big problem of the motion, however, are clauses A and C. By only asking for rail to be considered and by pushing east of Roe Highway routes for the freight realignment, the motion is ignoring the key step of identifying multiple possible solutions. Step 2 of problem solving fail. Instead, the motion's a bit like a magic potion. It jumps from traffic problems to supposedly magical cure-all for the traffic woes in the region. Where is the research to show that MRS 1313/41 is the underlying cause of our favourite traffic jam spots? There isn't any such report that I know of in existence. Instead, we're being asked to swallow the magic potion medicine. Putting magic potion analogies aside, Clause D lists the need to consider many different groups. We agree, but note Clause D is missing other very, very important considerations. Viable solutions need to also conserve the value of important historical sites, and our precious environmental assets. That's both for ourselves and for future generations. I'm not the right person to be talking about important historical sites, but I can note that in relation to the nearby Lloyd Street Bridge proposal, key elders have explained to the city that the Helena Valley floodplain is very important culturally. Clause D omits the environment as an important consideration. I've detailed how special bushland is in my deputation for the first motion, so I won't repeat it. Just say one critically and one endangered TEC. Now, there have been many variations east of the Roe route produced in the 4 years since the unanimous decision to support MRS 133041. The latest version would severely impact the Helena River and its wetland areas. That's an important environmental asset, one that should be treasured on our back doorstep. To me, I don't know much about engineering, but the wide foundations to support heavy freight-laden trains going across wetlands seems very expensive. They'd have to be huge, and they would have a big impact on that whole area. Building on riverbeds and floodplains defies common sense. It's very expensive, and history tells us so. So we want Helena River and its wetlands to be treated with the respect they deserve for its flora, fauna, historical and cultural values. Its importance has been recognised in the recent Lloyd Street Bridge case, where the design for the bridge is being reconsidered.
You have 1 minute left, thank you.
Okay. And in their work for the feasibility for the Lloyd Street Bridge, Main Roads say they're going to be revisiting the bridge design and location. They're going to be undertaking traffic modelling, examining road safety and road network performance in the vicinity. This is research that could be built in usefully into a traffic study and the full integrated plan that Diane mentioned. What's happened since the request for the plan? If the motion could be altered to take out the magic potion-like clauses, then we could get closer to a solution of traffic. Let's ask for a traffic study. The traffic problems need to be correctly identified, defined, researched, and the multiple options assessed before an optimal, viable solution is produced and implemented. We don't swallow the magic potion solution being suggested in clause 1C of this motion, and we're very concerned about the environmental impacts, as I've explained. Please reject this motion. Thank you.
Thank
Any
you.
questions?
Councillors, any questions? Thank you. Well done. You're
Thank you.
right on the button of 5 minutes. Thank you very much. Thank you. The next deputation is Mr. Gavin Troy in support of the motion. Thank you, Mr. Troy. Once you start speaking, you'll have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councillors. I believe this is on.
The red light's got to come on, Gavin.
Got it.
That's
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you.
I come before you again on this critical matter for Midland and Bellevue. The National Rail Route current alignment and the proposed realignment as per the 2018 MRS proposal as covered in MRS Amendment 1313/41 and the impacts of that on traffic flow standards are extremely critical for your area. Mr. Mayor, I'm standing before you and councillors this evening representing the Reformed Hammer Group, and with that organisation having a significantly wider representation than solely landowners. I might just add, we have the full support of the Swan Chamber of Commerce with this issue. Mr. Mayor, your council is aware of long-standing traffic problems in Midland and Bellevue. The emerging traffic issues south of the National Rail Freight Route, the emerging growth areas served concurrently by Military Road and Clayton Street, without mentioning Lloyd Street and in the future the Abernethy contribution to which we, as an organisation, totally support and stand in dismay with the Lloyd Abernethy link is delayed in the manner that it is. There's historical elements to Midland and the domination of rail over all road considerations. But today, And I emphasise today, there's no longer a justification for that domination of rail in Midland. If it is to become a modern integrated community centre catering for all comers, and the move from an evident struggling economic base with excessively high turnover and vacant shops and offices, there is a need to move. Why do people not come to Midland? Why do they try to avoid Midland? Why was the Midland Oval not being the success it should have been? Well, the answer is very clear to many, including road users. Access and parking is not what it should be within Midland and will not be unless you look, and can we suggest, review both the road and rail line layouts as they exist and what is planned. Your council hardly needs further traffic studies to support a review. The 2017 Jacobs report, commissioned by the Public Transport Authority, and to which your council finally gained access this calendar year, gave you all the reasons you need. It was completed in 2017, that Jacobs report. It had two scenarios. The 2021 scenario identified 7 intersections in Midland with an F rating. An F rating is equivalent to 500% over acceptable levels of traffic. So it's clearly evident in 2017, you saw it in 2021 with many of those areas in problem, certainly in late 21. So their work was very accurate in that context. In 2031, they identified not 7, but 17 intersections with an F rating. And you consider you still need another traffic study? Councillors, in your July debate on Councillor Nino's earlier motion, you entertained argument that a further traffic
1 minute left, thank you.
was warranted. If you cannot understand the technical wording of a Jacob report, I suggest you make contact with your engineering staff. They're quite competent. The current state proposal is standing with the 1341 is going to lead to very significant problems for Midland. It will further disrupt traffic movement south of the current alignment, and particularly in Clayton Street and the proximity to Clayton and Lloyd intersection. This will have serious consequences that reflect into the more northern road network. The Bellevue Industrial is bounded by Rowe, Clayton, Milton, will become isolated. That locality will suffer significant access shortcomings, economic downturn and property value reduction.
Thank you, Mr. Troy. That's your 5 minutes. I've got a mover asking for an extension. How long, Councillor Henderson? Well, I don't know either.
No, I would say 2 minutes.
I've moved. Second, Councillor Johnson. Is there anyone against? You have 2 further minutes. Thank you, Mr. Troy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councillors. Councillor Zeno's motion before you is carefully worded to ensure the following. An interrelated road and rail study is undertaken for Bellevue and Midland. The study considers vehicular traffic flows now occurring and is planned to include the imminent closure of Robinson's Road, which today you have no advance from the state government on what their solutions are to that problem. That particular consideration is given to the easterly solution for a maximum benefit to Midland, and that attention is provided to those areas previously subject to misinformed advice of impacts, but were deliberately planned to be avoided right from the offset. The greater consideration is given on this occasion to all interest groups and not just property owners on any review undertaken. The considerations made to grow on the southern sector must be closely examined. Traffic studies, and there's a number of them from Jacobs 2017 forward, should all come into account in this review. Let me summarise, Mr Mayor and councillors. You must seek this review now. Development is forging ahead. Do you wish to face the future as you are now being subject to? The question being asked, why was the amendment MRS 1313 accepted in 2018 when there was a far better option available? Councillors, and particularly those who were previously opposed this simple request, and it is a request only of the state to just give Bellevue and Midland a fair go and to not always be the safe seat without consideration. On what grounds can a simple request without cost to the City of Swan be denied? We thank you, Councillor Zanino, for your strong support on this issue, and we hope you are further supported by all councillors. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, councillors? Sorry, Mr Troy, there's a couple of questions to be asked. Councillor Johnson, you're first. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, Mr Troy, I've got a question for you. Have you got the same motion up in Mundaring? Because it's mostly in Mundaring, this new alignment.
I wouldn't say mostly in Mundaring. Are you talking about the land mass affected, or are you talking about the number of people affected?
I'm talking about kilometres of rail line.
With people. I haven't been back to the Mundaring Council. I did go to them previously, but bear in mind they acted on a lot of false information.
Yeah, it's a simple yes or no question. Have you got the same motion up in Mundaring? Because it's mostly in Mundaring.
No.
Thank you. And my second question is, I've got a leaflet here that somebody distributed in Bellevue. Did you write this leaflet?
I had input to it, but I'll draw your attention. That is the advert.
So you did write
the
it.
advertisement that appeared in the Echo.
Yeah. So you did write it then.
I had involvement with that leaflet.
So which parts did you have involvement with?
I'm not prepared to disclose that.
Well, who wrote the rest of it then?
I'm not prepared to disclose that.
You seem.
I'll tell you what,
stand by it then.
Councillor Johnson.
Mr Mayor, this is an important matter because it's
It
got
is,
some
and
inappropriate commentary in it.
The presenter said, he wasn't going to give information out. He wasn't prepared to go any further. He's answered the question. If you have another question, please move on.
So which parts did you write? Did you write the facts of Councillor Zanino's motion? Did you write that section just here?
Mr Mayor, I think I've answered his question.
I believe you have too.
So you wrote part of it?
He had input in it, he said.
So you're partially responsible for it then? So it's authorised by you?
It's authorised by the Hammer Group. If you look at the top of the pamphlet, you obviously haven't read it closely.
Have you got a further question, Councillor Johnson? Did you have your hand up, Councillor Howlett? Thank you. You're next, followed by Councillor Richardson.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr Troy. I just want to know, are you the author of the motion C1.1, or did you work closely with Councillor Zanino on preparing that motion?
Councillor Zanino has been aware of my interest in overcoming a rail problem in Midland for nearly 20-something years. I suggest you ask Councillor that question.
Okay, so that's your answer. Thank you.
Councillor Richardson, you were next. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Mr Troy. Just curious, I've got these realignments in front of me. We've been at council. We've all got these proposals in front of us. I'm just trying to gather information. Who are the members of this Hammers group?
Oh, I'd be here for 15 minutes and I don't have that time to disclose them all.
Is there someone in charge of the group?
Well, the Hammer Group.
That I could contact to get further information about the proposal that you're putting forward?
Yes, if you read the letter that was distributed to Bellevue people, Mr. Cos Canelio
I don't have a copy
is
of
our
that
director.
letter.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Where would I get a copy of that letter from?
Oh, I could ensure you get one if you give me your address.
Thank you. And then, sorry, who is in charge of this group? The contact.
Well, the original Hammer Group was formed back prior to 2010 with a primary interest in negotiating the proposals, and there were many of them, for the rail realignment in Midland. That group saw the earlier work of Councillor Zanino and made contact with myself and were keen to reform their organisation. That organisation has been reformed, but it is not just property owners as it originally was. Because one of the shortcomings of that earlier planning for 1313 only addressed property owners. It didn't address businesses that were affected in Midland. It was poorly performed. So the group is widened to include not only property owners, business operators and ordinary residents.
And another question. So I'm just curious, there was an Australia Post letter drop done, quite an expensive Australia Post letter drop done recently on high quality paper. Was that the one I think you might have there? Was that posted to Bellevue residents?
I know nothing about an Australia Post letter drop.
Yes. It was? Yes. Thank you. And I'm just curious, did you have financial input into that Australia Post drop? Because if you're part of this Hammers group, you would know that there was a letter drop.
Yes, I do. They authorised
So
it.
do you have any financial input into that Australia Post drop?
No, I contribute my time.
Right, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. You indicated you had a further question.
Question, staff.
Okay. Any more questions of Mr. Troy, councillors? Then thanks for your time, Gavin, your questions and your
Thank you.
deputation. Thank you. Councillor Johnson, you have a question of staff. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, we all got this map on our desks. I just wondered, was this produced by the staff or was it provided by the
Mr. Vanderlyn?
As far as I know, this map was circulated by the, not from somebody from the public Hammer group. It's not done by the city.
So in that case, could I ask a further question of Mr. Troy or the Hammer Group, if they're present?
Well, it's unusual.
Yeah, it's unusual. I thought it was produced by the staff.
If Mr. Troy is happy to come up and answer a question, Councillor Johnson, it's up to him. Thank you. If you could turn your microphone on. Thanks, Gavin.
Thank you. So we've got two maps. We've got this map, I think you've just distributed. And you've got this map you've just distributed in Bellevue, but they're different maps. So which is the correct map?
They're not different maps. Would
They're
you
not
like to show
different.
the differences?
Well,
On the route that is possible,
I think they're obviously different.
no, they're not, councillor. You can't
I
make
think
statements
I
like
think-
that without substantiating.
Well, I'm looking at the two here. The one's got a bit of a wiggle in it, and the other one's a nice recurve. So they are different. So do you think you're either misleading council or you're misleading people in
I'm not.
Bellevue?
I'm not misleading in it. Mr Mayor, if I can explain.
Councillor Johnson, if you could let Mr. Troy said he was going to try and explain the difference between the maps. No. One thing I've observed straight from the word, there's different sizes of the maps. So straight away, they might appear different because of the actual physical size. But if you could please continue, Mr. Troy, thank you.
Mr Mayor, the map, which is on the part of the advertisement placed in the Echo, has been very accurately determined to ensure all those areas of concern were clearly avoided. I asked an engineering group to assist that with a satellite or optical view over the streets, and I was delivered with that map this afternoon. I'm not entirely happy with the curvature on the lines because that is a critical thing, but it does explain the points that you, councillor, raised before, that there were 41 houses in Bellevue to be affected, which was untrue, that there was an intrusion on the Robinson Grove development between Clayton Road and the river, which was untrue, and it involved the Bushmead Bush Forever, and it goes nowhere near the Bushmead Forever blocks.
You're saying,
Those,
so you're
all
saying
three maps clearly identify those objections which you raised.
so what you're telling us is your latest map is also wrong. You said you're not happy with it, so you're giving us a map that's wrong.
I don't believe he said that, Councillor Johnson.
I don't believe I did either.
You're just interpreting the way you want to hear it.
There's one other point, Mr Mayor, that's absolutely
Well,
critical.
sorry, Mr. Troy, I've asked you to come back to answer specific questions.
It is specific to his question.
Well, which part of the question haven't you answered?
We're not asking.
Satisfied with the answer, Mr Mayor? I don't need any more answer.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry. While Mr. Troy's at the podium, I'll allow another question, Councillor Parry. Thank you.
What was the other point you wish to raise, Mr.
The issue with this is councillors are being asked to advance a request of the state government. We are not sitting here as engineering designers of the route. We have simply put forward a possible route that should have been examined back in 2018. But the fine detail on that route would be undertaken by the state government.
Thank you, Mr. Troy. I believe you've answered that question adequately, and I thank you for your time. Sorry, councillors. That takes us to the next item, item C 1.4. Councillor Bowman, traffic on promenade, promenade traffic. It's on page 452, and I have one in-person deputation from Miss Nicole Macri. Are you here, Nicole? Thank you. You can come up to the podium. Once you start speaking, you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Nicole Macri and I'm in support of item C 1.4. I've lived in Ellenbrook since 2006 with Arbor Drive as my main street to my home. Over the years, as expected, traffic has increased with population. However, since the opening of the Tonkin in 2019, there's been a considerable increase in traffic on Arbor Drive. A traffic study revealed that more than 3 times the amount of planned traffic uses the road. Arbor Drive is a residential street with a 50-kilometre speed limit and has approximately 10,000 cars use it on a daily basis. Approximately 90% of those cars travel on Brookmount Drive, passing by Arbor Grove Primary School, where the main entrance gates are to the school. I have 3 kids who are very street smart, but every morning they ride to school and I worry that they're going to be hit by a car. My husband, who owns a business and receives many calls, always has his heart in his throat when his phone rings at 8:30, thinking it's going to be a call saying that one of our kids has been hit by a car. Quite often we see cars travelling at speed, both on Arbor Drive and Brookmount Drive. I contacted the council in September of 2020 in regards to the traffic issues with Arbor Drive after noticing a considerable increase in the traffic in the first year of the Tonkin opening. Since then, the issues have increased after the traffic lights were altered to having a green turning arrow only. This reduced the flow of traffic through the traffic lights, with many cars having to wait the entire light cycle for the green turning arrow. Many people use Arbor Drive and Brookmount Drive as a shortcut to the Tonkin Highway and to avoid the traffic lights. I've witnessed many near misses from cars trying to turn from intersecting streets onto Arbor Drive. I live off Arbor Drive and find it incredibly hard to get a safe break in traffic to turn onto the street when I'm driving to work. I've read comments on the petition that I started that have over 500 signatures, with most people commenting that the street is no longer a safe residential street and they're worried for their kids' safety. Someone commented that the car was rear-ended whilst they were turning into their driveway. Another has had theirs written off. Many have commented about the speed of the road users as well. I've been contacted by residents thanking me for taking action and stating that they too have contacted the council in regards to the traffic issues. One solution to the issue would be to change the traffic lights to include a blank turning arrow during the light cycle. This will allow more flow of the traffic, reducing the wait times at the lights. To help combat excessive speeds and hopefully deter the traffic from using Arbor Drive, I'd like to suggest the installation of speed cushions, which have reduced noise in comparison to speed bumps. Please support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you for your deputation. Any questions, councillors? Councillor Bowman?
Thanks for that, Nicole. Nicole, Harbour Drive was recently closed because obviously the roadworks.
Yeah.
What was the traffic like in the neighbourhood?
Obviously, with Arbor Drive being closed, we couldn't use that street, but turning onto Brook Mountain Drive, there was such a big difference in the traffic. There was a noticeable decrease, and people also commented on public forums where I posted the petition link, and they said that it was lovely with the road being closed.
And to your knowledge, were they running through other back streets or were they going down Broadway?
There was a big bank of traffic heading towards the traffic lights, but people also commented that people were using Farmina Parkway as their shortcut to avoid the traffic lights.
Is there any other questions, councillors? Then thank you for attending your deputation and answering questions.
Thank you.
Councillors, that takes us to the next item, item C1.7, Councillor McCulloch, Midland Oval Development. It's on page 458. You'll see there's two written deputations, one from the Midland Society, not in support of the motion, and the second one from Miss Francesca Irwin, not in support of the motion. That takes us to the next item, C3.1, Community Care Service Review, Expression of Interest, Election Criteria. So this is a confidential item coming to council. However, I'm happy, not knowing what Mr. Carey is going to say, to have the deputation made in public, but just ask council if they're going to ask any questions that could be of a confidential nature, then I'll have to clear the gallery if any such questions are asked. So thank you, Ron. Once you start speaking, you'll have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, councillors and the CEO. Excuse my dress because I've just come back from driving clients around all day as part of my voluntary duties. The last client I dropped off today, I won't mention her name, but it's available if someone needs it privately, has been using the service for 28 years. She lives in Ellenbrook. It's invaluable to her and every single one of your clients. Firstly, let me take you back to March 2015, when the then City Council adopted a report titled Providing for an Ageing Population. One of the key findings of that report, which was adopted unanimously, required that the City of Swan do everything possible at all times to ensure that members of our ageing community are respected and have their basic needs met so they can live with dignity and be able to participate in society. We ask that you live up to that obligation by keeping the ideals front of mind. The foresight shown by Mrs. Kath Overhew and her friends in 1981, so that's taking you back even further, led to the establishment of the current Community Care Service Advisory Committee, of which I've been the chair for the last 13 years. They also adopted the association's constitution, and you can read the objects of our constitution in a submission you're all going to be handed at the end of this meeting. It is an 11-page submission setting out our concerns about the thoughts to outsource this service. One of those objects in the Constitution is highly relevant to the issue to be discussed under item C3.1, and it reads, to act as advocates, that's what our committee has been doing for 41 years, to act as advocates for frail age or at-risk frail age persons, younger people with disabilities, being persons within the boundaries of the City of Swan, with matters relating to their transport and health needs, safety and general well-being. In our submission table this evening, we've also reminded you, among other things, of the history of the committee, the contribution made each year by our volunteers, and our concerns about the move to look at outsourcing the current range of services. When I say we, I speak on behalf of members of your own staff who are attached to the Community Care Services Business Unit. Our volunteers, in the numbers now in excess of 50, and more importantly, the thousands of clients we've looked after for the past 41 years. I remind you of the petition I served at the last meeting with 256 clients signing saying they want the services kept in the hands of the City of Swan. Why only 256 signatures were obtained? I'll leave you to ask the senior officers about the ruling they imposed, which had an effect on the numbers we were able to gather. I'll leave that for you to ask. If this is about saving ratepayers money, and I believe some have suggested that, we say it's money being well spent and it should continue. The operating deficit for 2021-22 was $288,000, a reduction from the previous year of $454,000. When we divide that amount of money, the 288,000, into the 62,000 rate notice that went out in that same year, it's costing each ratepayer $4.63 each, or a cup of coffee. Our volunteers to make all this happen.
You have 1 minute left, thank you.
Over the years have given 30,000 hours of service each year. We've covered 350,000 kilometres conveying clients each year. That's 7,000 kilometres every week. We've delivered clients on 21,250 separate trips each year, and that's 400 separate trips every week. Some of our drivers are travelling 250 to 280 kilometres a day to cart clients or carry clients from outlying areas to hospitals, etc., etc. In the submission, we've attached letters to the editor, to the Echo newspaper, and we ask you to remind you to read those again if you haven't already seen them. In particular, a poem written by one of our clients of 15 years, Mr. Russell Lemke. The heartfelt words that he has written, I think, speak for every single client.
Thank you, Ron.
I've got about another minute, thank you.
Okay, is there any objection, councillors, for one further minute? Then please continue.
Thank you. Now, tonight we find ourselves at a bit of a disadvantage. That's we, the committee and the volunteers and the staff, because you'll be hearing this matter behind closed doors. We won't hear the debate and we won't be able to hear what each of you have to say about this matter. It was disappointing that we as a committee and volunteers were not consulted on this latest phase of the review. I remind you that all the current range of services are run professionally. It is reliable, safe, friendly, efficient, and most importantly, it's affordable for the clients. The current service system is not broken, so why are you looking to fix it? If you do call for EOIs, and we hope you don't, the following questions should be asked of interested parties. Will your organisation be willing, prepared, capable and equipped to fully replicate what the city is currently delivering without increasing the cost to clients? And will your organisation continue to provide services to clients who reside in the outlying suburbs such as Gidgee-Gannat, Bullsbrook, in the northern, most newer suburbs within the city's boundaries, and again without increasing cost to clients or without withdrawing services to those living in rural areas? When the motion was moved on the 6th of April, there was mention made of setting some performance standards. I think you should ask the question of interested parties, if you're going to do that, who would be responsible for monitoring and measuring the performance standards of the new providers, and what could be done if the city finds out that the required standards of care and support fall below what was expected and agreed? If you outsource this service, there'll be no coming back. Once it's gone, it's gone. And the only people that are going to suffer will be your clients. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. You took that 1 minute and made them 2 1/4. Sorry, I've got some questions, Ron, if you can come back to the podium. So, thank you. Councillor Richardson, you were first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The first question, the second one will be for you, Mr. Carey, is to Mr. Bishop, please. Could you please explain the response from Mr. Carey regarding the ratepayers, the number of ratepayers that replied? I think it was in the 250 mark, and what was the reason for the numbers behind that and how it was worked out?
I don't know exactly.
Sorry, Mr Mayor, can I ask for that question to be repeated? I didn't quite follow.
Sorry.
Perhaps if you can,
In Mr Carey's deputation, he referred to the ratepayers that were surveyed regarding the services the City of Swan offer and asked us to ask staff how that number of responses was evaluated.
is the number of people who signed the petition.
Yeah, I certainly can answer that question, Mr Mayor, but that relates to a performance matter on to do with staff, and I would need to answer that under confidential cover, if I may.
Second question. So, Mr Carey, I have put it to staff to ask for that answer. Thank you.
I knew the answer to that, but you didn't.
And I'll have to wait for that confidential answer, but I have asked that. So,
sorry, have you got
I
any
have got a
questions
second
of
question.
Mr.
So
Carey?
Yes, the second
Thank
question is, Mr Carey, if we look at the umbrella of services that are provided by the City of Swan, if there were to be some cutbacks and changes made, from your point of view and opinion, where could we possibly make those cutbacks under that umbrella of the different services that are provided without possibly altering the transportation side? And maybe is it the home care, which would be the two highest of value to you?
Well, with respect, we're suggesting that you keep the whole shooting match, everything. There's no need to make any changes. It's working beautifully. There is 1,100 of your registered clients or clients registered with the City of Swan. The great majority are cared for in their own homes. We, the volunteers, don't deal with them. That Mr Bishop can help you out with that later on. But we're not suggesting that there's any changes. It's working absolutely beautiful, and there is not one single client that wants this to change.
Thank you, and I certainly understand where you're coming from, particularly from working at the hospital, and that these services are vital. There is a deficit to the community, and I understand that you've worked out the costings and it's quite minimal, but from a council's budget perspective, there's quite a deficit. So if there were to be, and you had to, could you suggest where you might see those services cut?
No, as I say, we don't want anything to change. Thank you.
It's almost getting on the point where Mr Carey can't answer because he'll be going to other areas and it is a confidential item. Councillors, any more questions of Mr Carey? Thank you. Then, Ron, I thank you for coming along, making that deputation and answering the questions.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillors, that deals with all the items for deputations. It now takes us to item 6.3, councillor questions in regard to any other items. And I plan to run through the matrix. So if you have a question on an item or you intend to put an alternative motion in, if you could please indicate. So item 13.2, Morrison Road West Development, 13.2. Councillor Howlett.
I will be doing an alternate motion.
Okay. Once again, I'll ask all councillors to liaise with staff to formulate your motion and get them in early and give all the other councillors the opportunity to read and consider them in due course. Thank you. So Councillor Howlett on 13.2. Councillor Johnson, I've got your name already on 13.8.
Yeah, that's right, Mr Mayor. I propose to delete in the
item F.
Yeah, item F in local planning scheme 17 delegation. So that's making recommendations to the JDAP. I propose to remove that delegation.
Thank you. Councillor Bowman, you have a question on that matter?
Oh, on 13.8.
Yes.
Mr Mayor, I noticed the officers are recommending a subtle change to condition 5 of delegation 1, which will allow the tender review committee to accept tenders over 10% again now, so long as they're specifically quantified and explained to the TRC first. So is that delegation allowing the TRC to commit funds not budgeted for?
Mr CEO, is that a Mr Coton question or a Mr Lay question? Yes. I'm sorry. Oh, sorry, Ms Hodgkin.
Yes, through you, presiding member. No, it's money that's within budget.
So the delegation specifically says that they can accept tenders that are over 10%. This is what we restricted previously because there was a grey area which I thought was very dark grey, that you cannot delegate an absolute majority, and an absolute majority is an item of spending unbudgeted funds. And to clear that up, there was a firm previous delegation change that restricted it to 10%, which is our budget variance amount that's adopted. So with this change, am I reading it correctly that we're now trying to go back to where we were and let the TRC have delegation to adopt tenders that are over 10%, so long as per the requirements, that they tell us specifically quantify and explain why?
Do you understand?
Sorry.
Sorry, do you understand the question?
Yes, I do understand the
Thank
question.
you.
As you would appreciate, at the moment, pre-tender estimates are quite challenging because of the increase in materials, labour, etc. But so it allows us some leeway, because what we're finding is that, we are exceeding those variances, but it still has to be within budget.
Okay. So, Mr. Mayor, I'll be making amendments because that's not what this delegation says, and I'll actually be removing the delegation from the TRC and increasing the delegation to the CEO.
Thank you. Item 2.1, policy employee separation payments.
Question, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Johnson, you have a question?
Yeah, just going back to the previous one. In the
13.8, yes.
Yeah, page 106, councillors. When I read through this, I saw some sections I thought other councillors would be particularly interested in, such as the determination of extractive industry applications and the determination of applications for telecommunications infrastructure in all instances. I just thought I'd draw that to other councillors' attention. I thought I'd be part of an omnibus alternate motion, but perhaps not.
Thank you. There's more of a comment than a question, I thought. On 13.8. Thank you, Councillor Howard. What's your question?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. With regards to additional changes on page 49, the new condition G and H, I just wanted to know, does that mean that all extractive industry and childcare premise applications will not go out for public consultation?
Is it you, Mr. Russell, or Mr. Vanderlyn?
Mr. Mayor, if I may just ask the page number in the agenda, I said page 106. What is it?
Yeah, page 106.
Okay, and it's then you're referring to.
Okay, well, I'm looking at page 49 in the report, so under the additional changes. So
If you look at 106, it's the actual delegation.
apologies.
No, it doesn't mean that it won't be advertised. It will be advertised. What the delegation states is that if there are no objections received from the public, it is then delegated.
Okay, and one further question. With regards to the new condition J, which is about the Guildford Mandoon Heritage Area Local Planning, does that apply to retrospective applications as well, or is that just new applications?
For you, Mr. Mayor, that will be all applications. That will include retrospective applications as well.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask that we have a track change copy, which is what I thought we previously were getting? Because there's a number of other changes that the staff now put in, just a little word here or there, that actually, from my point, have significant changes. So is that possible to get the track change copy?
On this item, yes. Thank you. I'll now go back to item 2.1, policy employee separation payments. Any questions for Councillor Bowman?
Mr Mayor, in the report it states that the new legislation requires the city to publish the policy on the website. Can I just find out what legislation that is and when that was gazetted so I can have a read of it before next week, please?
Get that question, Ms Lay?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I believe there was an update a couple of years ago and we had been operating under the premise that we would publish a management policy. However, that is something approved by the executive and not the council, and we've now reviewed this by going through the delegations register and seen that we've misinterpreted that, and we're preparing the policy for council.
And if you can provide Councillor Bowman with the... Thank you. Item 3.1, adoption of the Whiteman Local Area Plan 22 to 27. Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Mayor. I've got quite a few questions. Page 146 to start with. It refers to, down the bottom there under phase 1, of people reached of 20,224. For instance, if we do a mail out of, say, 2,000 people or something like that, would that be considered as people reached, or considering that a lot of it gets chucked in the bin? So I want to get some feeling from staff about what the term means, people reached.
Mr Vanderlyn, thank you.
Mr Mayor, what that means is that through the social media and the advertising that the city did, there was 20,000 people reached through that process. The website was visited 677 times with 345 comments. So the reach of the website on which it was advertised goes out to 20,000 people.
So, Mr Mayor, I'll expand if I may. If I go to Facebook's help centre, it refers to reach as the number of people who saw any content from your page or about your page. This metric is estimated. So in other words, you may have said as you skim past a whole pile of stuff when you're going down through your Facebook pages, it doesn't mean that you've necessarily contacted. So I'm trying to get to, there's also impressions, Mr. Mayor, are the number of times any content from your page or about your page entered a person's screen. So the thing is, I'm trying to get down to Mr. Van Lin, 20,000 people haven't been reached, and I believe that the impression here is misleading. That's what I'm trying to get to. Can you expand on your view about whether those people have been reached?
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I'll take that on notice and I'll get the details from the social media people and distribute that information through to councillors through the week.
So, Mayor, just to make the point, you might get 20,000 that you target, and so therefore that becomes part of a reach for the algorithm to come up with a number. So it's quite difficult to get a real answer other than what people actually clicked on, which could only be a couple of hundred. So the actual genuine reach is what I'm trying to get to. This is misleading.
Well, you've asked the question, you've made a further comment.
So
got any other questions, Councillor Henderson?
Yes. So on page 149, it refers to the survey that was completed by 72 respondents. And then we look at the pie graph. Unfortunately, the neutral disagree doesn't have what I'll call a red section that would be disagree and a section for neutral. Why haven't we shown who actually disagree to balance up the detail within that paragraph.
Mr. Vanderlyn, when you're ready.
Mr. Mayor, I'll have to go and look at the detail and see if it's necessary and possible to split it. I don't have that information with me at the moment.
Okay, thank you. On that particular one, then, Mr. Mayor, I'll have some discussions with Mr. Vanderlyn and I'll propose some changes to the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Parry on the same item.
This is quite topical for Braddon now, Mr. Mayor. I've read that in the consultation.
Sorry, Councillor Henderson, can you turn your microphone?
I'm sorry.
Can please continue, Councillor.
Thank you. It also notes that in person, the community was consulted in person at Jungle Park Millie Markets event. Did we have a stall set up in that area as well, please? Does anyone know what we did in person in regards to that site, please?
Thank you, Ms. Pickering.
Yes, thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, the store was set up at the markets and the residents were questioned and provided with surveys that they filled in.
Do you believe it was quite fruitful as well? The responses that were, there are a number of responses in that area as well?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the first part of the question.
I said, were there many responses from that in-store process?
Oh, I'm sorry, I haven't got that data in front of me, but I can.
That'd be great, thank you.
Any other questions on this item, councillors? And thank you. You follow up with the relevant staff to have those questions answered. Item 3.2, adoption of the Ellenbrook Local Area Plan 2. Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Mayor. In a similar vein, on that particular aspect, I'll be pursuing some further detail and perhaps changes. But one area that does concern me is that I think it was 0.6% of the Ellenbrook community. 0.65% of the Ellenbrook community of 44,289 commented. So I'm concerned that the representation is very low. So the question arises on page 157 under priority 1, suggestions. Dot point 4, the look of it, priority 2 it is, sorry, dot point 4, preserve trees on private land. I'd like to know how many people wanted that. I'd like to know whether or not it was driven by any particular agenda. If staff could give me some detail on that, because I don't believe we should be telling people what they should do on their own private lands. It's certainly on Crown land and our land, yes, but I'll be willing to look at a change of that.
Thank you. Provide that information when you get it, Mr. Vanderlyn. Councillor Bowman.
Just following on for that question too then, if it's possible, for what suburb it came from. My understanding it was from the Swan Valley ward and not the Pearce ward.
If you can get that.
Mr. Mayor, I'll go into the raw data and see what information we can subtract from that.
Thank you. Item 3.3, subsidised CCTV scheme. No questions. 4.1. Oh, sorry.
Way with just recommendation 3 and 4. Why are they needed?
What page are you on, Councillor Bowman?
The agenda page, whatever the recommendations are on. Sorry.
Okay. Page 194. Question for you, Mr. Bishop.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Questions 3 and 4 relate to maintaining the city's network of fixed mobile CCTVs and increasingly using them in suburban streets. The intent of that was just to highlight that we are shifting into that space in the interim whilst this work is done on a CCTV strategy and community safety plan. Item 4, yes, if council feels that that's unnecessary, but it's just highlighting that there is a number of other initiatives other than CCTV that we're relying upon.
So, Mr. Mayor, am I correct in that response that they're not relevant to the subsidised CCTV scheme item?
I suppose per se they're not, so if you want to make an amendment or a motion next week.
Mr Mayor, my next question is how confident are staff that we will meet the April 2023 and June 2023 targets on developing the plans?
Mr Bishop?
Mr Mayor, the intent is, I believe it's in the report, that we're aiming to start consultation on the community safety plan around that time. It won't be to deliver a final plan by that time.
No, but the draft, it talks about the draft being available in June 2023. My question was, how confident are staff that we'll meet that target?
It's the best plan we have at the moment, Mr Mayor. The key issue with this area is depending on what happens during the summer with bushfires and things of that nature. But all being well, or only unforeseen emergencies, then that's our intention.
And Mr Mayor, my final question, obviously since this was a motion to get a report back, as part of that investigation and research, do we talk to other local governments regarding the compliance with the Surveillance Act? Because there's a section in that report that says, well, it's unknown, but I would have thought that in our research, we found out what local governments actually provide a subsidy, that we could have got that answered, because that seems to be a fairly big sticking point in this report.
Mr Bishop?
Mr Mayor, yes, that's correct. We have looked at some other local governments and we have asked about their views on an interpretation of the Surveillance Devices Act. We've had a mixed response to that. Some were very familiar and had a clear view as to whether it applied or not, and some less so. What we're suggesting in the report, though, is that we do some further investigation, and it doesn't, in our view, mean that you can't have a subsidised CCTV scheme. It just means, in our view, we suspect that we would just have to condition any kind of arrangement carefully to protect against the Surveillance Devices Act.
Any other questions on that item, councillors? It'll take us to item 4.1, Responsible Authority Report for Public Art of the Lakes in Hazelmere. Councillor Henderson.
I'll be moving an amendment in favour of the applicant on the public art.
Thank you. Item 4.2, the RA report on proposed childcare premises, Marshall Road, Bennett Springs. Councillor Bowman.
It's just regarding parking. Is cash and lieu an option? Getting them to pay for the installation of street side parking, is that an option? And the report indicates that street parking is available to the public and staff. But my question there would be, how would the public be able to use these parking bays if staff are going to always be parked there?
Mr Russell.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Ordinarily cash and lieu would be an option if the city had an approved program for the provision of public car parking bays proximate to the site within an appropriate time frame. In this instance, the civil design of the fronting road has already made provision for the installation of such bays, so it's already going in. In relation to their usage, it will be a first in, best dressed arrangement, Mr Mayor. So the public can use those bays, which includes the staff or any staff of the proposed childcare centre. So they're not given to one or the other. They're not promised to one or the other. It's literally first in, best dressed, but they can be utilised by the public and they can be utilised by the staff of the proposed childcare.
And Mr Mayor, my next question then is, can restrictions on those parking time limits be applied, like half a day, to stop certain staff parking there the whole time, to not let the public access?
Mr Russell.
Through Mr Mayor, that would not be an option that would be encompassed within conditions of approval. of a development application for private development, that goes to the heart of the city's regime for parking and whether it wants to time limit such public bays, and then most particularly whether it's got the resources to enforce that through inspections.
Thank you. That takes us to the next item. Item 4.3, home business, food catering, Jansel Avenue, Allenbrook. Nothing raised. Item 4.4, proposed extension to an existing roof, 2J Road, Gidgigana. Question, Councillor Bowman.
Mr. Mayor, the report talks about it's obviously a non-conforming use, and the report states that it's considered to comply with the zoning objectives in LPS 17. How's that possible when it's not a conforming use, when it's a non-conforming use?
Mr. Russell.
Through Mr. Mayor, the distinction being made here, perhaps it's not maybe as clearly articulated in the report, is that the what we're dealing with is a work or a structure, a roof, a replacement or extension. So to the extent the consideration of the compliance with the objectives of the zone in terms of the amenity of the areas in relation to the nature of the works of the roof, as opposed to in relation to the nature of the use of the facility as a tavern, which, as Councillor Bowman is quite clear in drawing the logical conclusion, is inconsistent with the objectives of the zone, must be because it's an ex-use in that zone.
Satisfied with the answer, Councillor Bowman? Thank you. 4.5, proposed shed, Orange Avenue, Upper Swan. Councillor Bowman.
Just a question on that. How's the applicant intending to get his boat into the shed? Will there be a driveway down the side, and as such, has they got approval for overwidth driveway application, or is that going to be an illegal application or another application?
Mr. Russell, are you aware of that?
Through Mr. Mayor, if we'll take you to page 268, you can see the proposed plans in attachment 2 very faintly depict the site crossover, existing crossover nodes changed to levels, and then you can see that it swings around down the side of the house to the shed. So it doesn't appear that they're contemplating any additional crossover, but of course the approval of the shed doesn't automatically preclude them from applying for an extra crossover subsequently.
Anything raised out of that, Councillor Bowman? Thank you. Next item, 4.6, proposed amendment to outline development plan, Kimberley Street, Bullsbrook. 4.7, consideration of submissions, proposed amendment local planning scheme to rezone certain addresses in Helen Street, Bellevue, from commercial to residential R20, R40, and reclassify Todd Park. 4.8, a State Administrative Tribunal request to reconsider a proposed tavern in Action Road, Malaga. Councillor Bowman.
Mr. Mayor, I noticed that now they're going to be utilising the parking lot from lot 327. I expect it's some sort of reciprocal arrangement. Is it a legal agreement or just she'll be right agreement?
Mr. Russell, can you comment on that? Thank you.
No, it's actually a application that spans an approval that covers the 2 lots and therefore has appropriate conditions to the 2 lots. So it's indivisible in terms of the approval. So there's no need for a reciprocal parking arrangement because they're one and the same under the same application.
So Mr. Mayor, my next question is, so if lot 327 is sold or is new tenants and wants to trade at 6 or 7 o'clock at night, that's their problem. They can't then say, I'm sorry, Mr. Tavern next door, I'm not letting you park there anymore.
Through Mr. Mayor, well, there are conditions that require the provision of a certain amount of bays from lot 327 and a certain amount of bays from the site which the tavern is on. So I suppose if an owner was to step away from that, the question is whether they're in violation of the approval.
Anything further, Councillor Bowman? Councillor Henderson.
Would planning consider putting a restrictive covenant or something like that on the lot that's got the parking? There's got to be some way of controlling that.
I'll let Mr. Russell answer that, but I've got my own view on
Through Mr.
covenants.
Mayor, if the council is of a mind that it would be far more comfortable to have such restrictions on title or covenants with the city as an interested party, it's free to impose it.
Anything on that one further, councillors? Item 4.9, statutory planning decisions under delegated authority. Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to notify an alternate motion to retain the existing process of including statutory planning decisions made on delegated authority in the report for noting. Reason being, it's good for councils and the community to know where to look for
Have you just
decisions that
provide
are
the
made on
details
delegated
in
authority.
your-
Yeah, that's it. That's the motion.
Thank you. We'll just get it submitted. 5.1. Oh, sorry, Councillor Henderson, I didn't see your hand.
Thank you, Mayor. In regard to this, some considerable time ago, we wrote a letter to WAPC asking for numbers of matters dealt with in the Swan Valley Ag Zone to get an idea of what was being approved under delegated authority. Has anything progressed on that?
Mr. Russell and Mr. Vanderlind.
Mr. Mayor, we've met with the department, requested to have had a discussion with them, and in the first instance, they then went back to their legal area to try and find out whether they can do that. And we haven't had any feedback since then. I noted that they do have some of the information on their website on a regular basis, but whether it includes all of the delegated approvals, I'm not too sure. I know they announce what they've been advertising specifically, but in terms of the decisions made, they haven't responded formally back to us. I'll follow that up with them.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If that can be followed up, that'd be great.
Thank you. Item 5.1, RAC Risky Road Survey, Farrell Neves Road.
I've got a question for staff. When I looked at the report, I see some very nice maps on page 377 and 378, but I can't quite see where the railway crossing is in this because the maps don't seem to actually include that section. Am I right in assuming that the railway crossing is not shown in this, or only a tiny part of it, the top left-hand side of 378?
Mr. Coaten.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, that's correct. It is just to the north of the second plan. It's page 553 on board books, but yeah, it is just to the north where you can see where the road would intersect with the rail.
All right. In understanding from the report that we don't know when a pedestrian crossing is going to be provided at that level crossing. Yeah, correct. And is that one of the dangers in this location? Would you say, Mr. Coates?
Would be desirable to have the crossing, yes.
Yeah. Are there any ways of speeding it up? Could we write to Transport or whoever is responsible, the minister, and ask them to advise us when they plan to upgrade that crossing?
We certainly could write to them. It would be likely they'd probably ask us for the funding for it, but we could do so.
I guess the question would be, wouldn't the owners or operators of the rail line and main roads, or potentially those, be responsible jointly to fund it? Would Movida have to fund it?
I don't believe that's included as a condition of their development.
Okay, all right, okay. Mr. Mayor, I think there's a gap here. I think we should at least write to the minister and ask them to fund a pedestrian crossing at this point. So I'll be writing an alternate motion to that effect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 5.2, City of Swan Water Fountains. Councillor Bowman first.
Mr. Mayor, a few questions on this one. The previous resolution of council was that we get a report to identify the parks and ranked in order of priority. Is there a reason why this didn't occur?
No, that
Mr.
occurred.
Curtin?
Yeah, that occurred. That's in the attachment.
My understanding is in order of size and works its way down, not necessarily in order of priority. Have staff actually visited the sites and looked at these sites and what they're used for?
Certainly, yeah, that is how we prioritise them based on size. I'm not sure if staff visited all of them, but that's the prioritisation system that we use.
Is there not already drinking fountains at some of these?
I don't believe there are, no.
And again, an example, I had to look at on year 5, Corona Way Park. I thought I knew where it was, which is just around the corner from me. It's a bit of dirt right next to the sewage farm / wastewater. I've never seen a person there, yet we're going to spend money on putting a water fountain there. So I question the list because it's purely on size and not on usage. And it seems like there's some there that I know of and been told by other councillors that there's already drinking fountains there. So I don't actually think it's an accurate list purely based on size. So I'll be moving an amendment, but I would have liked to see it ranked in priority. And definitely don't want to see us spending money on areas of 1, they're not needed, or 2, where there already is water fountains there.
Thank you, Councillor Bowman. Do you have a further question, Councillor Henderson?
I do, thank you, Mayor. Mr. Coden, in regard to water fountains, I believe there was a time where we were suffering massive amounts of vandalism with water fountains and we were removing them. Is that right?
Not that I recall, there have been instances of vandalism in drinking fountains from time to time, but I'm not aware that we've been actively removing them in parks.
I have a recollection, but okay. So do we have to pay for the water for these fountains?
Yes, a water meter is included at the park.
And what's the estimated cost for each site? Depending on where the water is, of course.
Yeah, well, very roughly $8,000 per site. Very roughly.
Per site.
Thank you.
Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, just looking at the little details. Queen's on page 383, Queen's Road Arboretum, I know does have a water fountain. It's quite a modern one. Does that one become disused, Mr. Coates?
I'd have to take that on notice.
And Kings Meadow Oval in Guildford, that's got a tap, which is probably sufficient for that location.
Well, the motion was water fountains,
okay, yeah.
And we do have a standard design for them, so it's not taps.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any other questions on that item, councillors? Thank you. 5.3 grant funding process improvements. Councillor Parry, I've noticed you've got something on that one, as has Councillor Bowman. You're going to work together. Thank you. Item 5.4, construction landscaping of Dayton District open space. Councillor Bowman.
Mr. Mayor, question probably to the CEO. For future reports, are we able to provide a bit more information for our ratepayers and residents? Because my understanding is this is a tender for, to include the sports pavilion, youth precincts, synthetic hockey fields, AFL ovals, netball courts, cricket nets, landscaping place park, and car park. I'm not sure, but if it does, within 20 million or whatever the budgeted amount, which is in the report, the estimated things seems reasonable. But if it's just for a bit of grass, I know it's not quite that simple. There's quite a few questions. So again, is it for all those things, or is it just for a bit of grass? Because from the report, I can't get that.
Mr. Coaten, thank you.
Yeah, we can circulate a plan to the councils. Yeah, but it's certainly, yeah, it's for the buildings, the synthetic turf, car parking, etc. Ovals, yes.
So in future, can we put that info in the report? Because to me, that's a good news story that we're going to start potentially building something, and the community might like to see that.
Point well made, Councillor Bowman. 6.1 Financial Management Report, period ending 30th September 2022. 6.2 List of accounts paid September 2022. 6.3 Change in basis of valuation. The next item will be, I believe, item 9.1, wards and representation review discussion paper. Will be an item listed under urgent business.
Do we know roughly when you might get that?
Mr. CEO.
Through the chair, we're certainly aiming no later than Monday.
You have a question, Councillor Henderson? We're all in the same boat. Item C 1.1, Councillor Zanino, proposed realignment National Freight Group. Councillor Johnson.
Got a question for Councillor Zanino. Councillor Zanino, do you know who wrote this section here? No, thank you. Wasn't you then?
Item C 1.2, roadside verge collection, Councillor Knight.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't believe my motion has public support, so the officer's report is pretty compelling and comprehensive, so I will be withdrawing that motion.
Okay,
Thank
so
you.
not proceeding on that item?
Not going to proceed. Thank you.
Thank you. Item C 1.3, Councillor Henderson, rate relief for Swan Valley Sporting Clubs. Councillor Bowman, you have a question?
A question on 1.3. Wasn't this previously considered at the August meeting? And if so, 3 months hasn't passed, so we can't actually consider it, which is exactly what happened with Zanino's, Councillor Zanino, motion.
I believe you may be correct, Councillor, but I would have to look at the two items. And Mr. Bishop, Ms. Slade.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. When it was considered previously, it was in relation to the 21-22 rates and backdated rates, and this consideration is regarding the current 22-23 rates and all future rates.
So, Mr. Mayor, perhaps my question to Councillor Henderson is, what's the confusion that he thinks there is in the previous motion if it wasn't intent to forever be writing these off? And hence my first question of, haven't we already dealt with this?
I'll have to look into it in further detail, and I'll give you a response once I've had the opportunity to do that. But Councillor Henderson. Okay, I won't be able to give it tonight, so I'll take that on notice, Councillor Bowman. Sorry, I've just got a further explanation from Ms. Lay, and I'll take
Through you,
that
Mr.
question.
Mayor. There were different discussions happening between different councillors and different members of staff. Councillor Henderson was under the impression that it referred to all rates, backdated, current and future. However, the way that the motion was written previously was just for backdating and the then current rates of 21-22. So this is to facilitate the original intent that Councillor Henderson had.
So then my next question is, this about future was debated at the August the 3rd meeting, and although it wasn't passed, it's been considered within the last 3 months.
And as I said, Councillor, I'll have to go back, refresh my memory. I'm not thinking 100% at the moment. If you can give me that opportunity, and I'll make a determination before next week. Thank you, Councillor Catalano. Okay. Well, you can debate it or move an amendment, but thank you. But I'll make a determination once I've had the opportunity of doing a bit of research. Item C 1.4, Councillor Bowman. Excuse me. The promenade traffic.
Quick question. The officer's comment states the city is engaging. Has the consultant been engaged as of now?
Mr. Coaten?
I can't be certain. I actually signed off on the report about a week ago. I'm not sure if the purchase order has been raised, but if they haven't, it will be imminent.
Perhaps if you can check and give Councillor Bowman a response in the next couple of days. Thanks, Mr. Coaten. Item C 1.5, water skill survival for migrants. Turning the page, community funding. Item C 1.6, Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, I've got a question. Would the staff still publish in the agenda, in the confidential agenda, the list of everybody that had received a grant if this motion were passed?
Sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you.
All right. Currently, once a year, we get a comprehensive list in the agenda of every grant that has been received by individuals and community organisations. Some of those are in the confidential agenda because they relate to people under the age of 18. Will we continue to get that annual report if this motion is passed?
Mr. Bishop.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, Councillor Johnson is correct. That is our preference going forward for anybody under 18, that we would continue to publish those in the confidential report only.
Just a further question, will we still continue to publish everything once a year so we've got it in one consolidated place? Because we've got a previous decision of council to that effect, and this motion does not seek to change that. It adds an additional requirement to publish on a website. So I'm just want to get clarification here.
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. There's nothing in the motion that precludes us from continuing to do a consolidated report once a year to council. So
just to get a bit more structure in that. So currently there's a requirement to do that. So this motion does not change that requirement to do that.
No, the motion only seeks to publish through you, Mr. Mayor, on the website within 30 days, subject to the conditions. Doesn't preclude us, I believe, providing a report once a year with a consolidated list.
But there's still an obligation to produce it. And I guess the second question is, what about people under 18? So the report does suggest that privacy is a consideration.
It's the wrong item. Start put the wrong recommendation in there. It's an old version.
Mr. Bishop, can you clarify that? Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, yes, apologies. Unfortunately, in the agenda that was sent out was the wrong notice of motion. It's not the one that was approved by Councillor Bowman. It will be corrected on the night, as I understand is the plan.
Just for everyone's information, what's different about it? Perhaps Councillor Bowman could explain.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I can read it out.
Thank you, Mr. Bishop.
Assist. So the notice of motion is that council resolved to request that the CEO publish on the city's website within 30 days all grant funding, sponsorship, fee waiver or reduction of fees provided to an organisation, club, group or team or individual subject to the following conditions. And there are 3 conditions. A, the reason for the financial benefit, the amount and the name of the recipient are to be published. B, only such circumstances listed in the above that equal or exceed $100. And C, where circumstances of such financial benefit relate to matters of financial hardship, vulnerability, or exceptional personal circumstances that are not in the public interest to be published, that the name of the recipient will be de-identified. The rest of the notice of motion is as per the reasons for the motion are as per provided by Councillor Bowman in the version you've got.
Thank you. That sounds good. So previous advice by staff when we originally started to publish this was that we could not publish the names of people under the age of 18. Does that advice still hold?
Mr. Bishop?
Mr. Mayor, that's why I believe Councillor Bowman has put in condition C, which says that matters that are of personal circumstances or financial hardship or vulnerability, not in the public interest, it covers that scenario under 18, but it also covers some other potential scenarios. So we would not be publishing on the website people under the age of 18.
Thank you, Councillor Bowman.
Mr. Mayor, just a quick question, couple of questions. Any fees, any waivers or fee reductions, no matter where they originate across the organisation, am I correct that only staff that are able to do these are the ones that have delegation delegated to them by the CEO?
Mr. CEO? Mr. Bishop?
As I understand the question, Mr. Mayor, it's regarding the delegations register. So obviously, yes, there's delegations to the CEO. There are some other policies and scenarios that are adopted by council for fee waivers and discounts. So, for instance, statutory planning fees under a policy and some other ones as well across the organisation.
But an example, if a sporting club wants to hire out our pavilion at $300 and the staff member waives that, are they required to have delegation to do that?
Yes, they either have to have a delegation. Most of the situations like that go through to the CEO to approve.
Okay, so am I right then that it's a legislative requirement that any time a staff member undertakes any delegation, it must be captured in a delegation register or another corporate document?
That's correct.
So, Mr. Mayor, the question I have then, are all waivers and all fee reductions across the organisation being included in the delegation or another corporate document at this present time?
CEO?
Well, I believe that to be the case without being categorical.
So, Mr. Mayor, my final question is, why would there be a 0.5 FTE to put this information that we're already capturing in the delegation register onto the website? That's 20 hours a week every week. So why would it require that much when we're already capturing it, yet the report indicates that perhaps we're not?
Mr. Bishop?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, my recollection is the original version of Councillor Bowman's motion did not have those three conditions associated with them, in particular the $100 limit. That would have meant that the motion captured every discount, such as a 10 cents discount or anything like that. There are records kept of those, but it would mean the resourcing relates to the requirement to collect that across the entire organisation, across so many different systems, and publish that effectively within 30 days on the website. It's just an estimate that there would be resource requirements. Subsequent to that, Councillor Bowman has amended, and that's where that $100 factor comes into play, which obviously makes it much more manageable.
So, Mr. Mayor, my final question then is, based on the fact that there's $100 limits now, this appears to be a very simple and very quick process. If instead of recording it just in the delegation register, which is quite required by legislation, it also goes on the website, which obviously some leading local governments have a delegation register on the website. Am I right that it's a fairly simple administrative process now in what this motion's asking for?
Mr. Bishop?
Mr. Mayor, no, I do not believe it's a simple administrative process because the records are kept across. The delegation records are kept, but they're kept across different systems across the city. So there would still be a requirement to, it's not anything exceptional, but there would be effort required to obviously collect that across a number of different systems and make sure it was published within 30 days. But far less so now that there is the $100 criteria there.
Councillor Catalano, you have a question?
Why couldn't a system be set up whereby the person that gives the waiver
actually automatically puts that into a waiver list, then it wouldn't need anyone else to then collect the data, because every single person, whether they're delegated in whatever, policy or under the delegations list, whoever is waivering the fee, why can't they just simply put it into the waiver list that's being asked for in this particular item?
Mr. CEO.
Perhaps through the chair, I could assist. Whilst the motion, as you know, appears to be relatively straightforward and simple, but it is far from that. Perhaps I could strongly advise that this be referred to a briefing session to talk it through, so that we go into a little bit more detail. It does require the consolidation of a whole range of areas, activities to put into a common format, perhaps like Councillor Catalano suggests. But I don't believe it's as easy as it simply appears on the council paper. So perhaps, Mr. Mayor, I could strongly recommend that it gets considered a briefing so we could go into a bit more detail offline.
Thank you. We'll decide that next week when the item comes. Any other questions on this item, councillors? That takes us to item C1.7, Middle of the Oval redevelopment. No questions. Then item C3.1 as the community care service review. That is a confidential item, so there's questions. If they're going to be of a confidential nature, then I'll have to ask the remaining people in the public gallery to leave. But is your question going to go over that line, Councillor Bowman? Then thank you. Thank you for the people in the gallery. Thank you, Claire, and I can't quite see the lady in the front row, but we're now going to go. I've got my glasses on and I've got a couple of screen or a screen, the podium.